Good afternoon, and welcome to Jumpstart's monthly webinar series, today with Stella Morrison on SEO strategies. I'm Lauren Smith-Petta, and I serve as Jumpstart's Senior Director of Education, overseeing to some degree or another all of Jumpstart's educational programming. Jumpstart strives to provide you with access to the knowledge and resources you need to make your small business bigger and better. Visit our webpage to explore some of our other educational opportunities for small businesses and tech companies. Before I introduce our presenter today, a few housekeeping items. This presentation session will be about 60 to 90 minutes with additional time set aside for Q&A. Our presenter will likely ask you to participate throughout in chats and polls, so please make sure your responses are going to everyone, not just hosts and panelists. You may need to make this selection in the chat drop-down menu. You can also see the Q&A, which is a great place to put your questions as they occur to you and to ensure that we address them at the end. At the end of today's session and in a follow-up email, you'll receive the slides, the recording, any additional resources relevant to this webinar, and a brief survey. We appreciate your feedback. It allows us to continue to bring in experts and entrepreneurs to teach valuable lessons. All right, without further ado, allow me to introduce our presenting subject matter expert today, Stella Morrison. Stella is the founder of the Stellastra Effect, an award-winning, woman-owned digital marketing firm focused on SEO, content marketing, and website design and development. She is an award-winning former journalist and content marketing expert with nearly 20 years of editorial experience. Her specialties are in SEO, editorial and content strategy, brand voice development, and thought leadership development. Stella was named a Marketing Maverick Under 40 by NJ Ad Club in 2025. She is a two-time Content Marketing Awards winner, earning Best Topic-Specific Blog 2 years in a row from the Content Marketing Institute in 2023 and 2024. She was also the 2023-2024 Content Marketing Editor for the American Marketing Association San Francisco chapter. In addition to her awards, Stella develops and delivers workshops and panels on SEO, content marketing, and marketing in restricted industries for trade shows and conferences across the US. I had to brag about her a little bit so that you know this is the real deal. We're not kidding around today. So now, Stella, welcome. We're really glad to have you with us.
Lauren, thank you so much for that introduction. Hi, everyone. Thank you for your time today and for being here and letting me talk about one of my favorite subjects, which is demystifying the incredibly complicated, constantly evolving, and multifaceted world that is search engine optimization. Fitting this into a basic into 60, 90 minutes is a little bit, it was a challenge. What we're going to be covering today is I'm going to be talking about some online visibility fundamentals. I'm going to be talking about what search is, how it works on a very high level. We're going to be really spending a lot of time today talking about some essentials. Just to give you a taste, I want you to have an understanding of what SEO encompasses and what actually influences, the systems, because without the fundamentals, we can't move on and build on top of a shaky foundation, right? So I'm a big believer in people understanding some of the fundamentals. And then we're going to talk about, well, what the hell's going on in 2026, right? Why are things changing? Why do people keep talking about ChatGPT? What's going on? Demystifying some of the things there of what actually is going to matter and apply to any work that you do in the next, the next couple months and even year. So Lauren had a really good summary of my bio, but just another quick introduction. I've been in editorial for about 20 years, 10 years specifically in SEO. My specialties are in local SEO content strategy, brand identity, and I have a lot of niche specialty experience as well, including tech and health tech. I've with the accolades already. You heard a couple different cities in there and states in that bio. I'm a recent Cleveland transplant, but got here about a year and a half ago, and my God, I love it here. And one of my favorite things is educating people on the ins and outs of what they actually need to know about search and how complicated it actually is. So without further ado, I'm going to start with some basics. What is it? When we talk about this massive thing of search engine optimization, what are we talking about? I like to call it an art and a science because there are more than, by most estimates, more than 200 factors that go into what qualifies for good SEO, which is why when we're talking about, well, strategies that work, I'm not going to give you a strategy that's a guaranteed to work because A, nothing is guaranteed. If anyone tells you something is guaranteed, it's run the other way. And there's also it's multi-layered, right? You can have really great content, but if your technical fundamentals are off, if something's wrong with the website, you're not going to get seen. And vice versa. You can have the fastest, most beautiful website in the world, but if the content's not relevant or interesting or good, you're going to have problems as well. So this is why I focus so much on background. So you can come in with an understanding of this isn't a straight shot. This isn't a one do this one trick and you're going to make millions of dollars. Unfortunately, it's still a lot of good old-fashioned hard work behind the scenes. So we basically it's the work that's done behind the scenes to influence search engines like Google and increasingly models like ChatGPT. We want them to recommend you and your business and not somebody else, right? So what does it take to get to the top of those? So that's what encompasses all of this work. You're going to hear me say Google a lot, and you're also going to hear me say search engines a lot. Google's not the only search engine, but it is the dominant one. Google makes up to 90% of the organic search engine business in the United States. This number has gone down. It used to be closer to 94, 95%. And the remaining 10 to 12% is every other search engine. It makes up the remaining 10 to 12%. So we do need to focus on the importance. We don't want to neglect anything else, but we focus on the importance of Google because Google sets the tone. Basically, any other search engine either is built on Google's model or they're going to follow suit. So basically, if it's good for Google, it's going to be good for everything else. But it's important, that's why you're going to hear me kind of interchange these terms. Some search engines work a little differently, but when I say search engines, I'm primarily referring to Google because of this. And Google's tools are incredibly powerful, especially something like Google Business Profile, which I don't have time to get into today. But power, I have seen when those profiles come down, I've seen people lose tens of thousands of dollars a day when they go down. So their tools are incredibly powerful and cannot be underestimated. So you're going to hear the word Google a lot, and that's why. But there are technical differences, but there's no point in spending the time today getting into those technical differences. Couple other things I do want you to know about Google before we jump in, because I don't know who's in here, and put your thoughts in the chat. If anyone has seen their results either go down, we're going to talk about why that's probably happening at the end. But if you've seen results, shift over time, you don't really understand why, your viewers are going down, traffic is going down. One of the reasons could be that Google rolls out multiple updates a year. And it's not like it's timed. They kind of just tell you, oh, by the way, we're rolling out an update. It'll be done soon. That's what they know. And then we have to kind of constantly monitor that. They roll out updates in three main areas. They roll out core updates, which are actual changes to the algorithm, content updates, which is what they look for in content, and then spam updates. So when they see folks trying to maybe abuse a loophole, they're trying to close that loophole. So they roll those out multiple times a year. They rolled out 3 in the last 2 months. There was a content update. There was a core update and spam updates. So that happened, and that just, we have to kind of pay attention. You can see where people go up and people go down after something like that. Google, and by consequence, other search engines, they like experience, expertise, authenticity, and trust. Trustworthiness, this is an acronym called EEAT that we're going to talk about later. It is not a formal Google acronym, but it is one that was developed to basically reflect the standards that Google looks for in terms of who makes it to the top, who's considered an authority, who has experience, who has expertise, and who can we trust. And Google also prefers mobile-first websites. So years ago, Google started prioritizing what's called mobile-first indexing, which means that the version of your website that loads and appears on your smartphone, they consider that first before the desktop version. So there can be discrepancies and differences between as they load, or they change sizes to fit the screen, called being responsive. So mobile first is always preferred. So we are thinking about the mobile version of anything you do first before the desktop version. And that's because that's the preferred method for Google. So we think about that. I pressed the wrong button. Very, very high level. How do search engines work? This is the extremely, extremely fast 101 100 version. You put content on a website. That content, the search engines do a system that's called crawling and indexing. We're going to talk about that. They come to the site, they digest the content, and they figure out where in the whole context of internet does this content belong. And then that process regularly, and then they index it, meaning they place it in that order. And then that process regularly repeats. They usually every couple of weeks, every couple of months, the site will be crawled, and there's methods to sort of speed that up. But you are sort of at the crawler's mercy in a way. But that's the very, very extremely fast version how they work. That's the process. That's what you can expect. As you can imagine, because this presentation is 60 to 90 minutes long, it is not that simple. So site speed is taken into account. How fast does your website load? Do search engines understand what you're talking about? It's not just people that you're speaking to. You have to speak to search engines as well. Because yes, they read, but they're not reading paragraphs like people do. So there's ways that you have to work your content and do certain things on the setup that make sure that search engines actually understand what you're writing. Technical, sorry for the typo. There's a lot that people don't see behind the surface. There's code involved. There's code involved. There's files involved. There's ways that we break down how people and search engines are understanding. And then there's also signals from other websites, right? How does your website relate to other websites on the internet? That is part of this as well. So when we talked about the estimate of more than 200 factors, this is what we're getting at. Yes, there's a lot of intricacy. There's a lot of little things that can throw things off, but we're not aiming for perfection here. We're aiming for progress. And I want you to think about your sort of your SEO journey in three main buckets. Bottom line is we can distill all these things down to, do you have a fast website, an easy to navigate website? Is your content good? Is it a good user experience, UX? Is this something, can people easily find what they need? Can they buy a product? Can they book a ticket? Can they book an appointment? Can they buy a ticket for an event? Is it easy for them to find that information? And now your technical fundamentals done correctly and revisited regularly, that's where the magic can start happening. Without one of these components, the whole model can struggle. So if your website loads slowly, you haven't touched the content in 5 years, or things don't look right on your when you pull it up on your phone, that's a sign that we need to start addressing that. So I'm going to break down each of these like fundamentals and talk a little bit about some of the important things. There's a lot. I'm only going to be talking about the items that are easily accessible to someone who might, I'm assuming most people here are not web developers and don't have a technical background. So I'm only going to talk about things that are, technically you can learn. So that's where I'm sort of limiting my discussion today. I don't want to open up any wormholes here for anything larger. So I want you to start thinking about your website as your welcome mat. Too many folks, especially small businesses, tend to think about their website as basically a glorified brochure on the internet, when it could be doing so much more for you. You can't put that up there and assume magic happens. Your website is the main driver for where everything flows through. So anything, if you want to track any data, if you want to sell anything, if you want to book appointments, if you want to improve your search results, right? The website and search engines and ChatGPT and other large language models, the evidence comes out that they turn to your website first. They use you as your own authority. And we're going to talk about that, more toward the end. For folks, and, I'm curious if anyone here relies on Instagram or TikTok or another social media platform to drive some of their sales. That is risky, because if social media algorithms, and I'm, again, shout out in the chat if you have experienced this, the data and the customer information are yours when people come to your website. They're not yours if Instagram or TikTok or whoever decides you don't belong there anymore and kicks you off or makes a change in your reach is all of a sudden a fraction of what it was, and you have to figure out the algorithm all over again. You're losing valuable information. You have handles, but the only way to talk to them is on that platform. When someone flows through your website, the data is yours. When someone gives you their their email address, phone number, that information is yours. That becomes your intellectual property. And you miss out on that opportunity if you're not leading on your website as like a foundational piece. And I want also to emphasize the importance of your website for both long-term growth and short-term gains. Search engine optimization is a long game. It is one subset of the whole discipline of search engine marketing, which also includes ads. Ads are a very quick fix, right? You run them and you start seeing action, relatively quickly. I mean, more complicated than that, but you start seeing action relatively quickly. And when you are looking, if your website isn't ready for those ads, you're paying people to come to your website for nothing, right? If they go to your website and they can't sign up, or the information is wrong, or the link is broken, all these different things, you put yourself at a disadvantage here also. So whether you're going for a longer term, years of growth, or you're just trying to get an ad program off the ground in 30 days, website quality is really central to everything that you're doing. So I really want to encourage folks to think about the website as the nucleus of their digital marketing and really of their marketing strategy. Remember, it's really important. This is a platform you own. You can't control what people say about you on Reddit or put in your Facebook comments. You can control what goes on your website, and there's a lot of power to that. And we're going to talk about that a little bit later as well. So there's a lot to consider with websites. So I'm going to go very brief here. What I want you to think about, we talked about mobile view and function. This is something that Google prioritizes. So make sure that the mobile version of your website is working properly. We want to prioritize fast loading. People's attention spans are not long. If your site takes 4 seconds to load, that can take too long. We want it to load in 2.5 seconds or less, right? We want it to load very, very fast. So if you are using like a cheaper server that has shared hosting availabilities, you want to move that to dedicated because that gives you more space. You want to upload smaller files. Avoid uploading things like giant videos to your website. If you want videos in your website, put them on YouTube and embed them on your site because we don't want to weigh down the servers. Google only reads up to a certain point of a page, and then once it hits a certain megabyte, but it's just like, I'm not reading the rest of this. So don't waste that space. So work with smaller files. Make sure you're on a dedicated server if you're not. Those are some smaller things that you would be able to work on yourself. And then free resource, Google has a tool called Google Page Speed Insights. That's the website for it. You will have an opportunity at the end to scan and download these slides if you miss something. So no worries. You can use this. They actually give you a score for your mobile and your desktop version. I do recommend you take it with a grain of salt because if you're at like an 89 out of 90, it'll be like, oh, you're failing. Don't worry about that. We want to see continual improvement. And also you can run that scan multiple different times to get multiple results, but use it as a benchmark, right? Where are you sitting in terms of performance? How are you doing? Worth you checking out. All right, I'm going to move now into content, and then at the end of the content section, I am going to pause for some questions. And Lauren, I do have a poll to start talking about content if you want to throw that up. There we go. I don't know if I can read my slides. There we go. I'm just moving it over. Sorry about that. So magic formula here. So why does content matter? Why does it matter what we put on the page? Because for the first and foremost, content is a signal to search engines that your website and your business are active and you're relevant. If you've been regularly updating, regularly publishing, when search engines come to crawl that website and come to digest what you're putting on it, they go, oh, that is an active and open business. We should be paying more attention because it's active and open. The content keeps interested leads on your website as well. This is a content marketing practice where someone comes to your website. We want them to stay. We want them to eventually take action, right? We want them to eventually fill out that form, call you, book an appointment, buy something. We want them to take action eventually, right? E-com is kind of a different thing, but we want to keep interest for B2B especially. We want to keep interested leads on your website with content. It's used to encourage visitors to take action. Do they download? Do you want them to download something? Do you want them to register for something? What does that action look like? And then we already started talking about content as a way to showcase that EEAT, that experience, your expertise, your authoritativeness, yes, it's a word, and trustworthiness. So what that looks like is, how do we use content on your website as a way to tell people and the internet and the crawlers and the search engines I know what I'm talking about. I've been doing this for X amount of years, or I'm a thought leader in this process. And how does that play a role in increasing your search engine ranking? So this is where content really becomes an engine, and one that, well, a very important one that not everybody tends to think about. Oh, excellent. I love seeing that people actually are updating their content in the last 6 months. That's huge. I'm really glad to see no one wrote more than 2 years ago, because that could be that can get very that could be a disadvantage for you. Especially most sites, if they've statistics are most sites are if they've had an update in the last year, 6 months to a year. So keep it up. All right, let's get this. There we go. All right. We talk about how great content is, but how do we know what we talk about, right? So there's a mix here between what does your audience want to hear? What do you want people to know? And playing the SEO game. It's a balance and it's a mix here that we want to make sure that we're hitting. So we want to think about what's called searcher intent. We want to think about, well, how are people looking this up online, right? So, for example, we want to put people in the shoes of the problems they're having. So, one of my favorite things to do, I want to talk to customer service folks. I want to talk to folks at your organization that are actually day to day talking to people and hearing their problems, because we can reverse engineer that to understand, well, I have a problem. How am I typing that in online, right? And not every search has been done before. I've seen, a good amount of searches per day are brand new and have never been done before. So it also doesn't mean that we can't go after it if it's something that there's no data or proof around. But it gives you a sense of, how are we stepping into their shoes, and what is their stage in this awareness like funnel of you as a potential solution, whether they're buying your product or your service, or they're hiring you, or whatever that looks like. So part of that balance is, I want to talk a little bit about generally when we're talking about keywords, and curious who's heard of keywords before. So keywords this has been the way that people have searched Google and other search engines for decades. And we're going to talk about the evolution of that as we get closer to the end. But generally, the discipline breaks down keyword types into 4 different buckets. Briefly, these are considered informational. These are very, very basic queries, like what is, who is, like very basic things. There's navigational, so people are looking to take like a specific action on your site, whether they want to log in or they want to sign up for something. They're looking for a particular page to move them. Commercial is when we're bringing people into the middle of the funnel. They're already aware of you. They already know you exist. They know your solution or your brand exists. And then how do we bring them in? We call it MOFO. It's a ridiculous acronym, but middle of funnel. How are we bringing them in further, right? Now they're at the decision-making stage. How do we convince them? So comparison content works really well here. Top or best sort of content works here. So that indicates to us that someone's a little bit more serious and they're about ready to put down their credit card. And then transactional. So this is when they're ready to buy, right? They're ready to take act or whatever action that is, right? It could be booking that appointment, it could be download, buying, whatever that looks like. Transactional indicates to us that someone it's time, they're ready to act. And how do we select these? So as you can imagine, so keywords are in very, very short. Keywords are Some are a lot more difficult to rank for others. And the difficult ones to rank for are going to take longer for you to appear for. And in some cases, it might not be worth it for you to appear for them in the first place, right? A local pizzeria does not need to appear for the word pizza. Domino's already owns that, and they've spent millions of dollars owning that. So like, don't bother, right? You don't need that, because the people who are looking for pizza are looking to go to the local place around the corner, right? So you don't need to be number one or on the top page of all searches for pizza ever. It's a waste of your time. We want to think about if somebody is more serious, right? So an asterisk here that Google and other search engines They know where you are. They have a lot of data on you, and a lot of this is relational to where you're based. So if I'm in Cleveland Heights. If I'm googling pizza in Cleveland Heights, it's going to come up with, I think Dewey's is the one up the block, right? That's more likely to show up than one in Little Italy. So because I'm physically here, and it thinks, oh, you're hungry now, go here right now, right? And that varies based on a lot of different factors, but that's very generally how it works. So but you don't need to waste your time being number one in the nation for it, because why? You don't need that, because search engines have already figured that out. They're already tailoring the results to know where you are physically, which is one of the reasons local SEO fascinates me so much. However, what if you specialize in something really interesting? What if you offer vegan options or gluten-free or something or you're known for your meat lovers pizza or whatever it is? That's considered when someone's looking for that kind of product or service, they're typing in a slightly more complicated keyword, and this is called a long tail keyword. This is generally, again, another asterisk here, lots of asterisks, exceptions in SEO, but generally, when you see a more specific search query, it's a signal to people. It's a signal to us that the person looking that up is a little bit more in tune, that they're a little bit more serious, because go back to here, right? It's a difference between looking up taxes and QuickBooks or accounting software and QuickBooks versus Zero, right? Like, think about the difference there. Like, one, they already are aware of you. They already know they're ready to take action. Generally, long tail keywords are more or less competitive than shorter keywords. That kind of specificity, yes, fewer people are looking them up, but proportionally, those people are more serious, right? If 1,000 people are looking up a term and only 10 people are clicking, imagine capturing, if you have 20 a month, but 15 of those people are clicking. That's where the proportions start coming in. And this is where we talk about blending that art and science. And on top of that, it's not just how you're writing and what you're writing. It's about the way that search engines understand structure. So I mentioned before that we're writing not just for people, we're writing for search engines as well. This is a primary way that this is done. So search engines understand content by the way that it is structured on a website. So when we have a title, which is called a heading 1 or an H1, that is important SEO information that a search engine understands. So the crawlers came to my website, they read the H1 here, and they understand that this is a blog about content marketing and SEO for ESG efforts. That's what they understand. They're not necessarily, it's not like a large language model that's digesting all the content. Search engines are understanding these headings and their subheadings. They're understanding more about the content. So when we give them the structure in this order, it helps search engines actually read the content, and it helps people as well, because a lot of people are skimmers. What's the best way to skim, right? You're giving them pointers right there in front of them so they can say, oh, they get a general sense of what we're talking about without even reading it. They have these headings and subheadings here. Generally, as you're writing, don't go for long, exhausted paragraphs. People are not going to dive into it. We want to vary things up. Throw in a bullet point. Throw in some bullet points. Throw in a table. And as you're writing, you want to group things by logical topic, because that is a way that search engines for years have understood. That's the way that search engines understand content. Is they want to see things sort of like in sensible bites. They want to know that you're answering, that you're speaking to the query right away. So sorry about that. It is cat's lunchtime. So we want to make sure we're grouping by logical topic here. And when we do that, we're helping search engines parse and better understand the information we're giving them. And on top of that, there's an importance of, we see a rising importance now in FAQs. So there's a reason that you're going to see frequently asked questions on a lot of websites. It's because for a long time now, search engines have leaned to that format. We're seeing it more amplified also in things like large language models, in the rise of tools like AI overviews in Google. If we're giving an answer clearly right away, search engines understand the FAQ format very well. So that's why you're seeing that a lot, and why I recommend folks you have an FAQ page on your site and sprinkle some FAQ throughout your content. Here comes another big asterisk. That being said, content is also, we want it, this is the art and science blend coming in. We're speaking to their audience, but we have to think about other people in your niche. What do the websites of your competitors look like? What are they talking about? What content is on those sites? And how can we strategically maneuver those in order to understand what, in order to potentially compete or do better than them or be on par with them. Because the very long story short of it is that search engines kind of get used to something after a while, right? They see some sets of content, they see some information, and then they made the connection. This like, there's a wine bar locally here, right? Like all wine bars have events on their website. They start making these like logical connections. So we need to play to that strength as well. So there's a little bit of gaming and strategy that comes in here. It doesn't mean copy your competitor. It doesn't mean completely imitate your competitor, but it means understanding what they do and how we can perform on par or better than them. Even if nobody's going to come, let's say you're a tax prepper. I have April 15th on the brain today. And no one's going to learn what a 1099 form is from you. But if all of your local competitors have information about 1099 forms, that might give you a sense that we have to put that on your website. And maybe we could find other ways to use that for marketing. So it's not just sitting there. Is it going to get a couple of hits? Maybe, but it's not going to be the main thing driving the leads. But that's okay. Not everything's going to be that case. So we have to, because remember, search engines are not just looking at a single page. They're looking holistically at your entire site and how the internet relates to your site. This is a holistic picture that they're getting. So something to keep in mind, and this is where the content, the art, and the science start getting a little complicated. And I'm going to leave you with some best practices on content. Again, remember, there's only so much I can give over at a time. So this is all done with asterisks, but I want to give you a sense of what you need to do. As you are going through what you want to be talking about in your website and how you need to be pursuing that, we want to basically tackle like one topic a page, right? We want to make sure that search engines clearly understand this page is about X, this page is about Y, and we're not lumping 40 different things into a single page. Your homepage is your most important. So even if it is a harder keyword or a broader keyword, we want to make sure that we're optimizing your homepage for the top target keyword, and all the other content you produce on the landing pages, on the blog, everywhere else is going to support that keyword. This is there's an old school tactic called keyword stuffing that spammers used to do back in the day, and you might have heard of it. This is when someone just continually repeats the keyword, even if it doesn't make sense. Do not keyword stuff. This is a spammy tactic that Google and search engines do not like, and they will penalize you for it. It is more important that you write naturally and you speak to your audience. It is more important to prioritize the audience than force a keyword in. Again, art and science, how do we blend it so it's a seamless feel? But you can kind of tell when a site is poorly optimized, not poorly in function, but poorly in audience relationships. When the keyword's kind of stuffed in there, and you can kind of tell because something reads awkwardly because they forced it in there. It should really read very smoothly, and it shouldn't feel forced. More information is a good thing. We're going to talk about the 2026 trends, but that doesn't mean you need to write a 5,000 word diatribe. People do not have long enough attention spans. That being said, this is not something, there's no magic amount of words that's going to guarantee you a ranking. There are some recommendations in some places. This is going to vary greatly by industry. So I'm not going to sit here and tell you have to have a minimum of, X words. But try not to do something 5,000 words, try not to do something 100 words either. I know that's broad, but I can't get more specific than that without going industry by industry, unfortunately. With that, I'm going to stop and take a break on content questions. Lauren, what's the best way to do this? Do you want to read them to me, or do you want me to stop screen sharing? Okay.
Sure. We do have a couple of questions from a little bit earlier in the presentation. The first was, what are your thoughts on Google sites to build a website that meets the magic formula? I found that my site looks good on website, but the header looks off on mobile or tablet.
You can hear me, right? Yep. So one of the issues, Google Sites specifically, I thought Google stopped support of Google Sites. So this is I didn't realize you're still using it. When you're using a builder like Google Sites, there's always going to be limitations. This is the case with Shopify, Squarespace, Wix, you're always going to be in a limitation. There's going to be little that you can do unless you go in and actually break the code. This is why I recommend WordPress usually for most people, because WordPress is completely open source, which means that you can do whatever you want with it. And there's a reason it is the largest platform, because you can do whatever you want with it. If you want to make a change, if the heading is looking funky, you can make a change. It's going to be harder on a builder that is provided by somebody. And also, if Google Sites does decide to stop, support of that, you're out of a website. That's a little bit, a little bit less risky when you're dealing with WordPress, which supports the vast majority of the internet. So, um, generally, I know a lot of small businesses use builders, which is why, I've been seeing a lot of Shopify lately, but there's, I'm discovering things that I have to go into the code and fix, because because it's something that is not intuitive. The builder's intuitive, but not much else about it. So, unfortunately, I think you are going to be, with a builder, you are going to be limited on what you can do.
Thank you. The other question is, how do you speed up your website loading?
This is going to depend on your platform and the access that you have. So there's a website I gave you before. It's the Google Page Speed Insights. I'm going to go back to that slide and show you. It's this one right here, the pagespeed.web.dev. That's going to come up with a test. That test is going to run. It's actually going to tell you what to do. It's going to give you the suggestions. Your ability to fix them is going to depend on your technical capabilities, and it's going to depend on the platform you're using, because some of them you can and can't go in there. WordPress makes it a lot easier. It's a lot more straightforward. But the first thing to do is to run that test, and it'll tell you. It's going to give you figures like, I'm going to speak Greek to you for a second, but like largest contentful paint, which is like how long the first round takes to load. What's taking the longest to load. How much is there any unused code on your website that's making things load slower, right? So everything's run that Google Page Speed Insights test and use that as a starting point.
Thank you. We have a comment and then one more question. So the comment is, Square is good too. I hated WordPress because it's so complicated and you have to always make sure your third-party widgets are always up to date or your website breaks. The navigation is complicated and technical as well. And then Kayla asked, what do you recommend for restaurants?
Okay, so good question, because I'm always going to deviate to WordPress because of how open source it is. The unfortunate downside of that is that it is more technical, and for people who manage their own websites, it's not as user friendly. So there's going to be a trade-off here. There's going to be a trade-off of what's going to be better for you to maintain. So, I mean, I work with Squarespace, Wix, and Shopify also as platforms. For restaurants specifically, you know, good question, because I go back to WordPress every time, because you can do whatever you want with it, which gives you the advantage of bringing in whatever app you want, right? So if you are using a certain platform to accept online orders or accept reservations, like Resi or something like this, you pretty much know any of these big guys are going to work with WordPress off the bat. If you are doing something more intuitive, if you are doing like a builder, like a Squarespace, you are likely going to be limited on what you can use. If you like the tools I don't know offhand which restaurant tools they work with, but you're likely going to be limited, right? So unless you're willing to go custom with that, which is at that point there's no real point. Unless you like the tools that they're offering, you might be forced within that ecosystem, which is one of the disadvantages that I see, where they're like you're limited on integrations, and that's one of the reasons that builders can be a little bit of a struggle. So it's gonna come down. It really is sort of like a personal question in the end. Overall, in the SEO world, we all love WordPress because of the customization abilities, but that unfortunately becomes the downside for a lot of small businesses. Unless someone is showing you how to use the site or doing basics on the site to maintain yourself, you do have to, work with somebody to do things for you. And that can be a trade-off, right? So I'm gonna say, your mileage may vary. I'm sorry, it's a little bit specific, but that is just something that shapes my decision when I am looking at the trade-offs, right? The trade-off of, how what do I need What do I need the website to do versus what are the long-term goals versus how much customization do I need versus am I willing to do the trade-off? Generally, website builders, like for Wix is actually a good example. Wix has had a really poor reputation for SEO for a very long time. They have made some changes to make things a little bit easier. I still see lags and issues, but they've improved. But that's something you're going to see a lot of opinions from a lot of different. You're going to see 3 SEOs and 5 opinions on something like this. So that's my 30,000 foot view here.
Thank you, Stella. That's all the questions we have right now.
Beautiful. All right, with that, I'm going to move on to start talking about technical. This is all the really kind of unsexy under the hood things that really help search engines understand and categorize, that content you're putting out there and understand what your website's about. So we already started touching on this a little bit in the content section, but this is really related to, how to talk to search engines, how to publish content in your site. Technical SEO is very deep. I am going very surface level here because I only have 24 hours in a day and 2 hours in this webinar. So this is, I'm going high level. I'm giving you enough to understand what you're talking about. That's the goal here. I want you to understand the basics of how things work and some essentials, again, that you can, that are tangible. That's something theoretically that you can handle yourself. So first, I want to explain crawlability and indexability again. So this is how search engines and large language models like ChatGPT to an extent, find, access, navigate, and categorize your website. So we started talking about before. There are multiple files involved in this process. One of them is called the sitemap. So this is the important one because this is one that you're going to be referring back to if you decide to submit your website to search engines like Google and Bing. They're going to want the sitemap. It is something that all site builders are going to generate for you automatically. So you're going to have that in most of those. This is a file. This is one. There's a few different files, but this is one of them that the search engines read in order to best understand the website content. So that's how they understand, oh, here are all the pages and how are they relating to each other. It's basically a file that gives them that. So just for you to know. One area that is something that is relatively easy for, whether in Builders, WordPress, whatever it is, relatively easy for non-technical folks to play around with is metadata. So metadata, this is information to your website. It's a way that search engines understand what your website's about. 3 core examples are title tags, meta descriptions, and alt image tags. So this is a screenshot of a search result here. This area, so when you go to Google and when you see the blue link, when you go to Google and you see the blue link, that is your title tag. That is a really, really important piece of information for both A, selling somebody in as small a space as possible, and B, communicating with search engines what this page is about. The little blurb underneath it is called a meta description. All this bold, anything like this is actually added by Google. Google often overwrites these. Google is starting to experiment with AI to overwrite the title tags as well. That is not rolled out yet. I don't know who knows if it's going to be a real thing, but they're starting to experiment with that. So if you rate something here and it looks completely different, not surprising, Google has been writing meta descriptions for a long time. Alt image tags are related to the images on your website. And you write a description of the image in order for search engines to understand what the image is about. It is also incredibly important for accessibility. This is something I could spend another hour in a webinar on, so I'm only going to touch it briefly here. You are required to have a website that is accessible by folks with disabilities. This is something that there are, and I have experienced this myself, there are people who take advantage of the law and will go around suing small business for not being accessible enough. And I've seen small businesses have to settle for thousands of dollars because this person just won't go away. Unfortunately, as only the law could be, honestly, accessibility, there is no checklist. There is no magical checklist that says you do these 5 things and you're accessible. The ADA doesn't set that out. There is nothing. There are global, what I like to call, so I don't like to call it compliance, I call it conformance. There are global standards for things like the size of a font, or the contrast, the color contrast in backgrounds. That are considered standards of meeting the criteria for an accessible website. It does not make you immune, but you can, if someone does, God forbid this happens to you and someone tries to troll you with this, you can say, hey, look, I'm trying, right? Like I'm meeting, at least some of this conformance. Small businesses tend to think that they're going to get missed. Unfortunately, you're the biggest targets for people who like to go around suing businesses like this. It's ridiculous, but unfortunately, it happens. And I don't want small businesses to, think that they are immune to someone trying to basically troll them out of their money, which is unfortunately how it's people who take, it's good intent. You need to, it's good to make your website accessible. It is a good thing for humanity, but there are people who unfortunately take advantage of that legally. Metadata plays a really big role in accessibility, especially in alt image tags. There is a lot of crossover between SEO and accessibility. One of the reasons is because screen readers pull information from the code. So we're going to talk about this a little bit more. You'll see some more examples of this, but alt image tags is a very easy way for you to add some SEO value to your website and get one step closer to accessibility conformance. So again, whole other topic. I could spend a long time, and there's people who are way more knowledgeable than me on that. But it is a warning I do like to kind of suggest to small businesses. I have some best practices here for these items, and I'm not going to get into how you pick keywords. I'm not getting into how you upload these to your website because it is different builder by builder and platform by platform, and I can't get into those specifics here. But generally, this title tag, to remind you, this title tag right here, this blue right here, this is something, the limit is about 65 characters and width matters. So it's characters, so a W is fatter than an I. So think about that when you're putting that together. With the main keyword for your page, you want to make sure that's used in the title tag. And you want to find a way to treat this like advertising as best as possible, right? I could write a simple 65 character description about this page here, which is about my DIY course. But you have this get more leads and sales. Like that's a little sexier. That's a piece of advertising, right? Let's take advantage of that. And it's the same. I don't sweat it too long. Think about if it is going to get cut off, if there's SEO value to it, it's worth it if it's running off a little bit, but it's good to get a sense of get a preview what these things look like. Here is a Moz, it's an SEO software. They have a free title tag checker you can use and kind of get a sense of what this might look like on search engine results. It gives you an idea. Meta description is similar. You want to accurately describe what's on the page, but also treat it like advertising, right? So what's this page about? It's getting hands-on practical strategy tips and advice, which is probably why Google bolded this for me. You have no control over this. They're going to do whatever formatting they want on it. It's approximately 160 characters before it starts getting cut off. Again, treat this like a little snippet of advertising. Alt image tags, it's important that you accurately describe what's going on in the image. Again, think about accessibility for folks who maybe have vision impairment and need a screen reader, for example. We want to accurately describe what's going on in the image. It doesn't mean that don't keyword stuff here either. Don't write the keyword 400 times in the image, but you can incorporate it naturally, right? So they want you to use full sentences with proper punctuation as well, because again, think of a screen reader, right? A screen reader is reading the sentences. So here's an example, and you can see the keyword here might be Akron Bigger. You can see how I incorporated that. I am accurately describing what is in the image. I'm describing who she is. I'm describing what she's wearing, and I'm describing generally what the photo is. So that's an example of an alt image tag, right? We don't just want to write a very brief description. We want to be, but we can sneak in some of these keywords without looking like we're stuffing. So this is, again, here's a great example of art and science, right? And this is something that nearly every platform makes it really easy for you to alt image tags to. Again, I'm not getting into specifics here, but most, if you, I'm going to tell you to Google it because I just don't have the time today, but it's something they make it very accessible to add these clips into these images. Come on, click for me. Thank you. Okay. This is a little complicated, so I am going to run through it pretty quickly though, because of time. So technical, basically every piece of the URL has has a name and has a purpose. We want to think about the end of the URL here. This is called the URL pathway. This is something that you might change. I see a lot of small business owners go in and change the end of the URL. It's called a slug. They go in and change it sometimes. And I hope some people here get the 30 Rock reference. This is the end of that URL. It is very easy. If you change the URL without proper protocol, you can break something on the website, and that can considered larger problems. So let's say you do have a URL, and let's say it's a service you're not offering anymore, and you want to take it down from the website. We don't want to just delete the page. We don't want to change the name of the page because that can create broken pages, and that has a really negative effect. Who here has gotten a 404 error before on a website? That's what this is. That's one of the reasons if a page not found, that indicates to search engines that maybe this site's not really worth paying attention to in the first place. So we have to either be strategic about when these pages come down and how they come down, and we have to provide, it's called a redirect. You have to give Google a forwarding address, right? The same that you move and you tell the post office, I moved to 123 Main Street. You have to tell the internet that that page moved. So don't delete pages willy-nilly anymore. Don't do it. Don't do it. You want to create a strat. You want to be a little bit smarter about that. Maybe you change the content. Maybe we do a 301 redirect. It's going to be, again, specific case by case, but be really, I see a lot of, I'm working on a site right now where I'm working on the page, and then I saw they just changed it, and I'm like, well, where'd this product go? And they're like, oh, I just changed the URL, and I'm like, well, that just broke a couple things. So be careful with that. This is just, again, I can't get into, not gonna get too much deeper here, but that will give you a sense of, what this does. And because of time, I am going to skip getting more in depth into it, but you can get the slides and you can read a little bit more. This is just what they're about in examples. I'm going to talk a little bit about something else that's easy for you to do on your site, which is called internal linking. Internal linking, every page on your website should be linked to another page on your website at least once, because without that, it's called an orphan page if you don't have that. This, and it's not just, plopping a link wherever. There's actually, there's strategy to it because it helps search engines understand which pages are important. When done right, it also enhances content by drawing people deeper into the site as well. So this is something that's, if you are familiar and comfortable with changing content in your website, like changing a paragraph or things like that, and a lot of small business owners are, what you can do is you can add internal links throughout the site in a way that helps, connect these pages to one another in a way that helps search engines understand the importance of those pages. So best practice is use descriptive terms or keywords in the anchor text. Again, this is an SEO thing and another accessibility crossover, right? If I'm using a screen reader and it says here with an underline, I don't know what here is. The screen reader is going to say here. I don't know what that is. But if I link book an appointment, it'll say book an appointment. So see, this is another place where art and science collide, accessibility and SEO collide. So think of it. So if you decide to do this, this is something that you want to think about a little bit as well. Here, I'm going to break for questions before I start getting into what's actually relevant for 2026 with this foundation. So were there more questions, Lauren?
I don't see any at this point. You folks are welcome to put them in the chat or the Q&A, but at the end, we'll also let you raise your hand, unmute yourselves, and ask your questions verbally. So if you want to move on, Stella, for now, we can field questions later on.
That's perfect. Yep. I'm going to do one more question break at the end before the TLDR of all of this. So don't hesitate to keep asking. I'm going to take a brief, remember we talked about it's not just what's on your website, but how your site relates to one another. I'm going to take a brief segue into what this is called. Everything we've been talking about so far is called on-site or on-page SEO, meaning we're talking about what's actually going on your website. Anything not on your website is appropriately called off-site or off-page. They're basically, one of the things that people want to do is you want other websites that are relevant to your business or are quality websites to connect back to your business with a link. So there's a couple ways to do this. Citations is typically what the discipline is called. It's really when a website links back to your website. There are directories that specifically do this. And then there's also link building, which it's a whole practice, and it is a very time-consuming practice where we are trying to get websites to connect to your site because we want search engines to read those signals of, oh, the New York Times linked to your site, you must be really important, right? And that's ambitious. In 10 years, I've gotten to the New York Times one time. And that's like, I'll be very honest, like it's very ambitious, right? So it's a way to signal your trustworthiness and your business's legitimacy. So you can ask for links to existing articles that are relevant to your website and your business. There's directory. Yellow Pages is a directory. That's a good example. Your Chamber of Commerce is a directory. If Jumpstart puts your business on their website, that's a directory. Media placement. So PR is going to become digital PR specifically is going to become pretty important over the coming year. And we're going to be talking about that as well, which is why I wanted to put a little bit about off-page in here just to give you some idea. And I also want to talk, I want to emphasize the importance of your name, address, and phone number. Search engines take this into account when trying to track legitimacy and accuracy of your business. So make sure that your business's name, your public address, and your public phone number are the same in every place that you list this on the internet, in every listing, on your website, on Google Business Profile. Make sure this is consistent across the web. So just keep that in mind as you go through this. And with all that background, with all that foundation, now let's start talking about what we're starting to see in 2026. So there's really 5 main areas, and yes, I'm going to talk about ChatGPT. We want to focus on, there's really 5 main areas that I'm identifying among my clients, and historically what we're seeing of what's actually making a difference in online visibility in 2026. So the 5 areas are, it's your brand and your brand identity, your authority. We're going to talk about discoverability, meaning how people are finding you. We're going to get into AI overviews, which is the expansion of AI overviews, which is a Google feature that you have probably seen. And then I'm going to get into what I love calling my oversharing era, and what I want you to get into your oversharing era. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about ChatGPT. ChatGPT used to be number 6 on here to talk about ChatGPT, but there's a reason I'm demoting it. So you're going to see that at the end. So first, I want you to be the Miss Frizzle of your brand. I hope that everyone likes my fictional teacher theme here throughout the presentation. So your brand is more than just your logo. Yes, your logo is great, but your brand is how people are thinking and feeling about you. So do you want people to know that you're a friendly, you're a friendly person, or you're like a no nonsense, get stuff done person, or that you have high quality product? What do you want people to know about you? And that's part of the brand. It influences how you look and how you feel, how people feel, and how you talk about yourself. The reason this is important is that branded search and non-branded search are 2 separate categories. When we're talking about branded search, people already understand you. So Jumpstart, if someone's Googling Jumpstart in Cleveland, that's a branded search because they've already heard of Jumpstart, right? So how have they heard of you already, right? Like they didn't they might have stumbled upon you. Maybe they saw you on Instagram. Maybe they found a flyer at a business fair, right? Maybe they saw something like this. That brings people into that top of funnel, TOFU. Yes, it's called, that's the abbreviation. It brings them in right away. And then they go, and the first thing they're going to do is they're going to Google you. So branded search is really important that you're coming up for your own brand and not some random Reddit thread critiquing your business, God forbid, right? Non-branded search is everything that we were talking about already. So keywords related to your business, right? So, business incubator would be potentially a non-branded keyword for Jumpstart, to give you an example. Depending on the industry, it's about a 50-50 split of branded and non-branded, but it's easier to appear for your own brand than it is to appear for some of these non-branded searches. So take advantage, be the educator on yourself, right? We want people, you are this resource. Educate the internet on you. And the main place that starts is your website, because it is considered by search engines, by ChatGPT, by large language models. It is considered the authoritative source for information about you. It is an anomaly if you are not coming up for searches of your own business. And it is something that it is a very easy area for you to own. So I want you to think about that, and if this is not something you've prioritized before, think about your brand. And think about your brand's values as well. People shop based on their values. And we see marketing evidence again and again and again that people shift their shopping habits based on their values. Are you clearly communicating those values? Do people know that you're a Black-owned business? Do people know that you're woman-owned? Do you know that your ingredients are locally sourced? Do they know that you're a B Corp, right? Do they know these things about you? Because people make shopping decisions based on that, right? They rather go to the local mom and pop shop than a Walmart, maybe, right? And how are you making the difference, right? How are you educating people on that? And it starts with your brand, who you are, and reflecting who you are. And this is becoming more and more important in search. This has always been a case in search, but this is becoming more and more important as search gets more mature. as more AI enabled features roll out. This is becoming more important because your brand's just not who you talk about. Yes, it's you are the authority in all things you, but your brand appears in so many other places online. And AI, as we're going to talk about, AI powered platforms like large language models pull from multiple sources, not just your own. So, what are we doing to get the word out about your brand? We need to think about that. That needs to be a core of what you're talking about in 2026. We want to hand in hand with your brand is your authority. Who are you? Are you legit? Are you full of it? That is something that search engines are taking to account. What makes you worthy of the placement, of the ranking, of the appearance? That's something that Google is looking for, right? Do you author articles, right? Are you active? LinkedIn's a bit of a hack right now, but like LinkedIn is really hot for this, right? Like, how are you standing out in a sea of sameness? Search engines want to prioritize new information. So, kind of as we explained before, regurgitating old information, regurgitating old information is only going to take you so far in that it helps search engines understand what your website's about, but it's not going to earn you the highest placement because you're not telling them anything new. But if you've had 10 years of experience and you have a hot take, that is experience, right? That shows search engines that this is someone, oh, I should be paying attention to that person because that person has something really interesting to say that's different than all the other information that I've been digesting. So it's not bad for you to have a viewpoint. If anything, lean in, lean the hell in, right? Now is the time to do that, right? How is it? How is your standing? How are you different? Especially in the age where people are regurgitating generative AI content, which is a whole minefield. But when people are regurgitating sameness, how are you standing out? I want you to think about that hand in hand with your brand for 2026. How people find you is also shifting, right? This is all about diversification. This is something that I have been pressing for several years now, and I'm first starting to see other SEOs pick up on this. Google, yes, is the primary search engine, takes up 90% of the search market. Most people are finding you through Google. And on average, for most of our sites, half of traffic is Google. But we need to think about how people use other platforms as search engines. Increasing evidence that TikTok is used as a search engine. Instagram is used as a search engine. Meta AI is trying to step up with that. How are people use Reddit as, I mean, Reddit and Google have a bit of a cozy partnership, but like people use all these platforms, Reddit as a search engine. People are finding you in other places. How are you showing up? So it's not just, but your website just yes, it becomes a narrative. It's a little bit scarier, in places you don't control as hard, but the way people are discovering you or verifying you is changing, right? So we are seeing more evidence of people who just, learn about you on social platform. But the second thing they're going to do is they're going to Google you for verification. So Google, there is a generational shift with how people are using Google. We're starting to see younger folks not, quote unquote, trusting it as much. But people still use, for the most part, people will come to Google for verification. So how you present there is still incredibly important. But having a presence in all these other places is becoming more important than ever because it's contributing to those branded searches, right? It's going to be your Instagram profile that comes up. It's going to be, your YouTube channel that comes up. And remember, Google owns YouTube. So there's some interest here in maintaining that ecosystem. Google wants to keep you in Google products, right? So think about the way that we're using other channels to push people to your website because people are looking everywhere to find you. So don't just, as much as I'm saying the website is your bedrock, it is your bedrock. There's still other satellites, but think about it as that main hub, that main location. This is a big one. How many folks? I don't remember if I gave you a poll for this, Laura, but I don't know. I'm curious who has seen a drop. You can leave it in the chat, and we'll talk about it later. I'm curious who's seen a drop in their traffic over the last year or 2 years. I wouldn't be surprised if AI overviews played a part in it. AI overviews kind of looks like this. Also curious who's starting to see this or noted this come up. I was thinking about Stranger Things clearly when this happened, but this is powered by Gemini, which is which is basically like the ChatGPT of Google, right? What this does is it pulls content from different websites and creates a summary of the content. The idea being is that you don't have to click, right? This has been a process for Google to roll out about 2 years now. It rolled out disastrously in 2024, 2 years ago. I don't know if anyone's ever remembers the meme where it's like, oh, Google told you to eat one small rock a day or to glue the cheese back on your pizza. That was its incredibly flawed AI overviews rollout, which, I have a theory of how that was contributed to. But AI overviews are now appearing for about 25% of searches conducted in the US. It's not available globally yet. The majority of the searches it's affecting are basic ones. So remember, we talked about informational queries before. What is, types of, who is, very basic queries. That's what AI overviews is pulling because think about it. A lot of people have a lot of general basic content. And how is AI overviews pulling from that? So this is contributing to a massive sea change in the way searchers behave online. Google does not give us data on how much content, how many clicks we're getting out of this. It will not disclose any information. It is saying that higher quality clicks are coming through. None of us in search believe it because if you can read something and move on with your day, and unfortunately, a lot of people, I don't want to say inherently lazy, but most people just want to kind of learn the answer and move on. They're not clicking. It doesn't mean they're not seeing, and it doesn't mean they're clicking. So what we're starting to see, and the pattern that we're seeing with our clients is the amount of impressions, meaning how many times you show up in search, is going up, while the number of clicks is going down. But revenue is staying the same. So what that's suggesting to us is that you're being pulled into AI overviews, and there are tools that help you see what's in it. They're flawed, but they do have them. This is a suggestion to us that you're being pulled into AI overviews and you might be losing out in the click. So, but if you're not losing revenue, if you are seeing a decrease in clicks, clicks have been the golden standard of measurement of success for a very long time. So we're in the middle of like a crisis right now. Well, not crisis, but we're doing some reckoning of what does success mean if clicks are being affected, right? So it's really this is a giant global change. This is happening in every industry. This is happening to every kind of business everywhere. Some like SaaS has been disproportionately affected by this because a lot of those platforms, I wrote those libraries, so I know, have been over reliant on informational searches to bring in those top of funnel queries, those what is queries, right? So what this means is, the importance that I have been putting for years on these longer tail keywords, middle of funnel search, bottom of funnel search, catching people further down the funnel. That's going to become even more important because those are folks who are going to be more motivated to click through. And since I've taken this screenshot, there have been changes in AI overview. They are experimenting with turning this like little link into tiles. So it's more obvious and it's, potentially will that increase clicks? And we don't know yet. That's still going to be an experiment. But this is a possibility that this is actually eating into your some of your clicks. But this is why it's important to keep in mind holistically how you're performing, not just hyper focused on like one metric. But this is only going to get bigger and you need to prepare for it now. Finally, I want to talk about the oversharing era. So I love to talk about this concept. People expect fast answers and answers relevant to them so incredibly quick. They want to know, how's this relevant to me? How is this answering my question? Is this giving me the information I want? And Google's SERP features, search engine result page features, Google Maps features have been tailoring to delivering this information. So if any of you use Google Business Profile, you're going to see there are so many different sections to fill out. How are we maximizing this, right? The more detail that we provide, the more search engines have to go off of. So you can search reviews. You're seeing AI summaries of reviews in Google Maps. So the restaurant example we were talking about before, if I'm going to, I have a gluten allergy, so I think about this one a lot, right? If I want to know if there's gluten-free options on the menu, I can find that pretty much instantly. And that takes my search down from a couple minutes to a couple seconds, right? So the detail that we are sharing with the internet, on our websites, on social, in reviews, the details that we're putting out there are going to help close the deal faster with the people who are looking for the information. People are looking for hyper-specific answers. They want to know how something helps them. They're looking for the the bar with the perfect ambiance for their date night. They're looking for that al fresco menu to enjoy this beautiful 78-degree day that we have today, right? They're looking for this information, and how are we delivering it? As business owners, we have the opportunity to be that Miss Frizzle, right? Let's go back. Let's talk about, we're the Miss Frizzle of our own business. We're educating people with our magic school bus. We're educating people on who we are, what we do, and why we do it better than competition. You are that source now. And I encourage you to lean into that oversharing, not inappropriate oversharing, but details that you think might not matter. One of my favorite tips is when I deal with folks in retail, when I work with local SEO in retail, when I provide detail about the parking, figures go up. People want to know if it's easy to park the car. Might be different in Cleveland than it is in other cities where it's difficult, but they want to know if there's a parking lot. They want to know if it's free parking, street parking. They want to know. People like to know information before they walk into a place. Be the person that gives them that information. All right. And finally, I am going to talk a little bit about ChatGPT here. Briefly, as of April 2026, this is how large language models like ChatGPT work. ChatGPT and other large language models are educated off of a set of information that is pulled from the entire internet. So they have pulled from trillions of pages by most estimates. They have processed. So they're already working off of body information of material it already knows. At the same time, it's conducting an internet search. So it's combining. So when it's working for search, it's combining, and you can also watch the same 4-hour video I did. I'm condensing this into 30 seconds, but it's basically taking everything it knows, combining it with a search, and then giving you the results. What the results are is the way that these large language models work is they interpret patterns. That's what they have picked up on the trillions of pages that they've digested, is they're making a guess on the next stage of the pattern. It is making a prediction. There's evidence now, which is why I've taken ChatGPT off my list of 2026, is because, there is evidence now that use is plateauing. And there's also evidence is starting to come out that ChatGPT specifically is relying, and I'm saying specifically ChatGPT here, not Perplexity, not Claude, not the others. ChatGPT is relying less on the live web and sending people to Google. Here we go. So here's just a really good example of, like, I like to give analogies and put people in human terms. So pretend you're an LLM trying to make a suggestion. Let's say you're Googling, I need a incubator. I need a business incubator. I'm looking for like business support services in Cleveland. Where do I go? The logic that the LLMs like ChatGPT have is, let's say, these 3 magazines all said Jumpstart is the best, and I'm pulling reviews about Jumpstart. I'm seeing all this on the internet. Logically, I should also suggest that Jumpstart's a great place to go. So this is generally how it works, and this is why consistency and brand is becoming so important. Showing up in multiple places is important. Digital PR is becoming more important. I consistently see the clients that we have that have in either DIY PR, and there's great resources in Cleveland for this, or who are working on, or who work with a PR firm or do themselves, however they do it. The more that they're appearing in other places, the better they're showing up in large language models and in AI overviews, because there's other resources that are it's not just you claiming on your own website that you control, which yes, they refer to first, but you control it. Other places are verifying that brand identity, and they're trying to talk to you in those pros and cons human way, right? So consistency in how you show up is becoming incredibly important. I also want to let's sober up here when it comes to ChatGPT. You have probably heard SEO is dead. Google is dead. ChatGPT is the future. Don't adapt now and your business is going to fail. How many people here have been solicited by someone who's like, I've discovered the hack and the secret to ChatGPT? No. I'm a sailor. I will say BS though here instead. I want to sober up a little bit on what the actual use of ChatGPT for search is. Only about 1%, and that's being generous, and that's only in some industries. 1% of searches are attributed to all large language models. 1% of all the ways people find your website is 1%. And that's after this meteoric rise and this chaotic embrace of platforms like large language models. ChatGPT makes up 87% of that 1%. Again, it's going to vary greatly by industry, but ChatGPT makes up the lion's share of that the same way that Google makes up the lion's share of organic search. And that's because, so just if you're not showing up in ChatGPT, don't panic. Focus on those SEO fundamentals because there is no what is good for ChatGPT and large language models is good for Google. You're going to see different terms floating around. People use terms like a generative engine optimization, GEO, answer engine optimization, AEO. They are all relying on SEO basics, the things that people are parroting that have been saying, chunk your content. That's the proper your structure for content that we've been talking about, and Google has been, and search engines have wanted for years. So I want just everyone to take a breath and think clearly about this. Any of the hacks, quote unquote, that I'll give you a good example, actually. For a stretch, there are folks who noticed a pattern that large language models like ChatGPT were placing. If you were placed at a best of list and you were at the top of the best of list, you were more likely to come up in searches. People abuse the hell out of this. And now it's actually backfiring. So any get rich quick scheme, it's going to backfire eventually. OpenAI does not have the same guardrails against spam and spammy tactics that Google does. It just doesn't have it yet, but it will catch up eventually and it will stop working. So be careful about anyone who's guaranteeing you something, guaranteeing you placement. Nothing is guaranteed in search. I hate to say it that way, but it's true. And it's also, I do want to note that ChatGPT, there's evidence that its growth, I have, over the last year or so, as I've been giving these kind of presentations, I have been very adamant about ChatGPT and the large language models will grow. It will not dwarf Google. That won't happen, but it will get more popular. We are actually starting to see evidence that its growth is stagnating. It might be temporary. I think a lot of it has to do, there's a lot of public backlash right now, specifically against OpenAI. Because it's 87% of that 1%, right? It's the lightning rod. It's the lightning rod of all the feedback and all the issues against LLMs, whether it's safety, whether it's hallucinations, whether it's deals that they are making with the government that Claude refuses to make. Public hatred against Sam Altman, the founder. Like there's a lot of public backlash. Time will tell if that's going to stick. So I'm not ready to back away from my will increase position yet, but I will forever hold that it's not overtaking traditional search. It won't and if it will, it won't be. We're talking decades. These are slower changes. It's been the rapid adoption of generative AI as a tool. Remember, AI has been around for a very long time. It's just differently. It's democratized in a very different way now. So I just want you to take a breath. If you're not appearing in ChatGPT, it's okay. The other thing to remember is that we don't have monitoring tools. We don't have data from ChatGPT like we do from places like Google. You will get, when you're talking about Google Analytics and Google Search Console and all these other free tools, you're going to get data. You don't get that from OpenAI. There is no real way to do keyword research on ChatGPT because think about how you interact with ChatGPT. You ask it a full question. You don't type in 2 words or 3 words. There's no database for that. That doesn't exist. And also think about how you do some experiments when you get home, right? like run a query, run it a couple of times and see the results change. You're going to get different answers between all the different LLMs. And ChatGPT, if you run, we do this all the time because this is how we model. This is how for our clients we want to get a sense of what ChatGPT knows about you. You will get different results every time you run the same prompt. So it's still in its tracking is still in its infancy. That being said, the evidence that I'm seeing is that folks who do get the recommendations from ChatGPT, the conversion rates are higher. We are not getting this. You can see how many people click on your site through ChatGPT, through monitoring through Google. That's something you can see in analytics. But I'm also pairing this with talking to clients and saying, make sure you're asking your clients, hey, how'd you find us, right? And they'll say, oh, I looked at ChatGPT or I looked at Google or something like that. Compare that to the numbers you're seeing. On average, for every remember a fraction of a percent, right? For every 200, 250 searches, one is being done on ChatGPT, but we are, from that is anecdotal evidence. To be clear, I am seeing evidence that there's some higher conversion. Whether it's probably the research that's doing for you and putting out those pros and cons and saying this is your best choice because, but that's going to greatly depend, and there's no real strong way to measure that just yet. So just deep breaths. You're going to be okay. And
Stella,
sorry,
would you
yes.
like to run that poll to find out how this group is using ChatGPT?
Thank you for the reminder. I told you I was going to forget. So yes, please do. Thank you. So I'm curious, are you using ChatGPT or another large language model more than traditional or less than traditional search engine? I'm curious. And while we're filling that out, sorry to tell you, Google is not dead. It's going to be still remain the pace for a while. And my final question break, while you're answering that poll, I'm happy to take some questions now before I do my TLDR and wrap up.
Yeah, so while they're doing that poll, I'll ask you a couple of questions that have come up. One was, how does the internet respond to a Google Voice number for NAP?
As long as you're using the same phone number across the place, I use a Google Voice number and I've had no problems. So that's as long as you're using the same number in all places, you're fine.
Thank you. Another question that came up is 2 months ago, I started Pleasant View site assessments for environmental and building site assessments. I have also reactivated my Ohio real estate license for personal and commercial real estate investing and advising. The real estate license only covers certain portions of Ohio and West Virginia. Is it possible to have a national reach to pull firms located primarily in larger metro areas who are looking for subcontractors in Northeast Ohio for their site inspections, report writing, but still have a local reach for real estate license side of things?
That is a multi-layered question. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to answer thoroughly without diving into your specific site. I'm going to give you some general advice. I can't speak to specifics without getting into what I'm seeing because this could be a play on is everything on the same website, site infrastructure, like the URLs I was showing you. I think at this point, if I had to be, I mean, I'd be curious what people are looking up, first of all, right? Are they looking for home inspections are they looking by state? Are they looking by certain area? So it's likely influenced by certain cities. So maybe this starts with like targeting cities in those areas of Ohio and West Virginia. Maybe it starts with like, looking for a home inspector there. And then going out. You can also expect, there's only so much of Google you can control. I'll give you an example. My father-in-law owns a hot tub repair business in New Jersey. And he is based in northern New Jersey, which is, if you know your geography, by miles, it's extremely close to New York City. But it is, in all practicality, you're not driving your truck an hour and a half across the city to go inspect a hot tub. So, but because, the map isn't, it's intelligent. It's not that intelligent. It sees a 5 mile distance, but the Hudson River's in the way, right? Not accounting for the fact that you're going to have to drive over a bridge and over, right? So there's only so much so you're going to, he has to tell people no a lot who call from, Queens, which is the other side of the city from northern New Jersey where he is. So that is something that might influence things here. You might get people like, just like anything in business, you might get people who just aren't a fit, and that's okay. I'm sorry, we can only serve this area. So then, how that plays into the real estate license, I think is just, I think you'll be focusing on, again, it's a little complicated for me to digest that without seeing the site and without kind of reading the question again. But I think playing to the strengths in those local areas is going to be okay. And just, sometimes there's going to be some crossover. And I think that's just, there's only so much you can control that.
Thank you. Another question is, which LLM do you use?
Claude.
Okay, why?
First of all, as someone who also dabbles in creative worlds, I do have a lot of ethical and moral questions about use of LLMs in creative fields. Overall, though, so I have issues with OpenAI as a platform, and the way that that business is conducted and what they're willing to protect and not protect. I personally like Claude's stance on privacy, and I've been, I've been very lucky with that. On a practical level, Claude has been put together by coders in a different way. So that a lot of I find that the quality of output is actually a lot stronger in Claude. I find that the output has been when I run ChatGPT versus Claude, I find that the Claude results are usually much higher quality. So that's the one I stick with. Also, keep in mind that large language models, they learn you as you go. So they're gonna this, and that's another reason why tracking I think is useless because they're going to get more hyper specific to where like let's say you've already conducted 10 searches in your ChatGPT account because you specifically want to look for support women owned business, for example. They're going to start automatically suggesting women owned in any search you do. Like it's just it's learning about you, and this is where people get concerned about that ChatGPT psychosis or whatever. Like it's telling you what you want to hear after a while. So keep that in mind. Just read everything with a grain of salt. But I personally choose Claude for the overall. I think it's a little bit stronger moral backbone. Plus, I think their their output generally is of higher quality.
I'm hearing that more and more lately, so that's just confirming.
There's
Um,
been a lot of controversy over the last couple of weeks, specifically in this arena. So I think a lot of people have been. You're seeing a lot of talking heads, frankly, that are like starting to jump ship on the ChatGPT bandwagon. But again, ChatGPT kind of won the publicity war, right? It has 87% of that 1%. It's like calling Kleenex a tissue, right? It's chat people say ChatGPT and they mean large language models. They say Google and they mean search engines. It kind of won that war, but they're getting it's kind of biting them in the tush right now, honestly.
I hear you. We have one more question, and then I will show the poll results. Carrie said, "Are you aware of people being hired to leave negative Google reviews? I had a situation because we didn't answer the phone. It was 3 minutes, extremely odd behavior, then a 1 star Google review."
Wait, they did or did not leave a 1 star review? They
Did.
left a they did leave a 1 star review. Yeah, this is there are people who play dirty. I see it all the time in retail, especially with competitors leaving fraudulent 1 star reviews. Um, Google has gotten really good at detecting brigading, meaning like when a bunch of people, maybe you went viral for something that was negative, right? And you leave a bunch, they can detect that you're leaving like 10 reviews in a row that are like, oh, you're terrible. Um, they've gotten really good at that. The individual review, they haven't been as strong, although Google has been really cracking down on this kind of tactic. They really crack down, but they're cracking down more on like, I got a free product in exchange for review kind of material. And they measure that based on like the amount of traffic flowing to a profile. Um, I mean, you can report it as fraudulent. I My take is if you have 100 reviews and one of them is negative, it is not going to tank your business. I think people tend to trust a 4.9 more than a perfect 5.0. If you are having an issue where this is regularly happening, this is something that I would start reporting. There are people who play dirty out there. It will catch up with them eventually, but it's going to hurt you. It hurts in the meantime, right? So it is something that can happen. I do see it happen. Uh, don't play dirty back. You don't win. Nobody wins with that. But my recommendation here is, don't sweat it if it happens one time. Responding to reviews is a really big part of the success of Google Business Profile. Um, you know, be courteous. Don't curse anybody out. Don't tell you it's this fake. Don't. We have to play the nice game, right? Like other people are watching. Other people don't know the material. They don't know what happened behind the scenes. I'm sorry for that experience. We either talk about how you resolved the issue or I'm very sorry this happened. Whatever that looks like that's appropriate for the situation. It's just that becomes a customer service issue at that point, and something that I would focus on there.
Great. Thank you, Stella.
Of
Um,
course.
I am going to end the poll so that you can evaluate the results, which are interesting.
Interesting. Okay. All right. So we got about half and half. All right. So this is interesting. Definitely. Hmm. I have follow-ups and you can put it in the chat. But are you using it as a search engine or are you using it for other things, right? So there's a difference here. If you're using it to help evaluate, like I'll use LLMs to help me with like, lists of, categorizing lists, going through thousands of rows of data, right? Like things like this, I wouldn't classify that as a search engine, but if you are turning to say, what is the, best suggestion for me, top whatever, help me find a restaurant for my anniversary, like anything like that, that would be like a search engine use. Fascinating. This, I'll tell you, I get this polled pretty frequently, and the answers are completely different every time. It's really, really interesting to see. So this is awesome. Thank you for humoring me on that. So briefly, as I wrap up, I'm going to just give you a couple things. What can you do right now today? A lot of things I told you, not everybody is comfortable with or accessible with, but I do want you to walk away with something actionable. If you're not collecting your data, start, because you need to know where you stand in order to make any improvements, to start making start getting proof of what you're thinking or feeling. Setting up Google Analytics and Google Search Console are both completely free. And you can look for instructions on how to install. It is different for every platform. So I'm not getting into specifics here, but definitely take the steps to install it to start collecting data if you're not doing that already. This is the time to focus on your brand if you haven't been. Think about the kind of content, the kind of articles, the kind of relationship building you want to have that's going to help build that reputation, that helps you come up in these AI powered features, that helps strengthen your own website. Take advantage of the user-friendly tools, especially if you're not comfortable with, working on things in the back end of your website yourself. And again, we touched the surface. There's so much more. So Google Business Profile is incredibly powerful and incredibly user-friendly. Make sure you're using it, right? Make sure you have up-to-date photo and video. Make sure, we're not using, and I will say, again, I didn't get into GBP because I need an hour for that. I will say you follow the rules exactly. Do not try to spam the profile. Make sure every place is accurate. Don't make up things for the sake of the profile. Don't spam it with sales because they are very strong on spamming their own on Google Business Profile, and you can get penalized for that. And if the profile gets taken down, it can be a real pain to get it back up. So make sure that we're using them accurately. And I want to emphasize centering your website because this is the bedrock of everything you do. Keep the material fresh. Don't let it go stagnant. It sounds like from that first poll that most people are doing that, which is great. This is the time to invest in your visibility, right? This is the time to invest in, because this is something that takes time. It can take months to see results, and that is normal. It can take, in crowded areas, it could take longer to hit the ultimate goals, and that's normal. I want you to create a plan for your SEO as well. This is the time. Think about what you can do, right? What makes sense for your business? What do you think you can start managing on your own? What do you think? Do you need to hand it off to somebody else? What does that look like? Start making a plan for that now, because again, it takes time. And high level, this is what I call my TLDR, too long didn't read or watch or listen. Bottom lines, the website is the center of your business universe. Treat it as such. Make sure that everything we're sending back to the website, that data you collect is ownable. It is wholly yours. It is your property. Google isn't dead, but pay attention to its evolution. Features like AI overviews are going to be the thing that affects you more than like the evolution of ChatGPT will. Because again, it's all percentages. 90% of the organic search market is Google. Less than 1% of the total of all website traffic is coming from LLMs. They're talking about magnitudes of proportion here. And you have to keep that in mind. People are going to discover you in all sorts of ways. They're using TikTok, they're using Instagram, they're reading Reddit threads. But your website is still the starting point. It sets the record straight. It is the platform you own. It is one that the figures we have from ChatGPT thus far, and LLMs and AI overviews thus far, they're pulling from your website as using it as a primary resource. Along with other sites, but they're using your website as a primary resource. ChatGPT is not changing the fundamentals for online visibility. What's good for Google is good for ChatGPT. The SEO fundamentals, however, remain the same. What's that magic formula? That strong website, that fast-loading website, one that people can understand, a good content and a good user experience, strong technical foundation. Keep that in mind. If those are strong, you can build and keep building and growing on top of that. Briefly, just to introduce my services after you heard me yap for the last 90 minutes, we offer our agency, we focus on website design development, content production, content marketing, and search engine optimization because these are the three pillars for that strong foundation. We offer all of those services. For platforms, we focus on WordPress, Shopify, Squarespace, and Wix are the four that we normally work with. We conduct audits, strategy and advisory work we do, consultation, and I also a couple times a year I offer a DIY class for folks who are interested in managing it on their own, who are managing it on their own but don't have necessarily are ready to take on or have some, or outsource it to somebody like our agency. We are in the middle of our second cohort right now. Actually, we're about to wrap up, so I do offer this a couple times a year, and we also are a Jumpstart partner. So we would love to chat with you if this is something of interest to you. And with that, I thank you for your time. I have two, you can fill out the form and I will email you the slides if you fill out this form. And also feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. I will leave this up as we go through the final questions.
Amazing. See, you were worried you had too much content, but it packed quite a punch.
I
Stella,
talk
thank you so
fast.
much. You do.
I talk fast.
You're not wasting any time. We do have a few questions. So regarding Google reviews, Carrie asked, should we respond to five-star reviews as well?
Absolutely. We see the difference in people who respond to reviews versus people who don't. Thank them for their business. Great, whatever it is. Definitely respond to all reviews.
Thank you. The next question is, I was recently MBE certified. How would you suggest adding that to my website?
Congratulations. I believe MBE, if it's anything like certified women owned, like WBENC, I believe they give you like an icon that you can put on your website. So definitely use that. That's something called a trust logo or a trust signal that people use. Put that in your website, link to it. I believe if there should be, I think MBE, some states and some of the authoritative bodies might have a directory you can list yourself in. And there's also, if you do have a Google business profile, this is, I know that on a lot of any other listings, a lot of any other directory listings you do, a lot of them will have the option of saying like certified, of like certified Black owned, certified Latinx owned, certified women owned, like whatever it is, they will have that category on there. That will be an option for you. So that is something that you can look into. That's the first place to start, but also, you can sprinkle that into your marketing. You don't have to hit people over the head with that over time, every time, but make sure it's mentioned on your website. Maybe you sneak it into your Instagram bio, right? Maybe it's a post of like, hey, I got my certification. Just like get that information out there. So what it does, so that information starts what I like to call marinating, and you'll start getting out there.
Great, thank you. The next question is, I have dual branding, counseling therapy, but two distinct brands and services. I would like to have them both on my main site. What's your advice for managing dual brands under one entity?
It's tough. It's really tough, unfortunately, because like from my experience of doing this, whenever we split an audience on one website, there is a detriment to it. It can lead it becomes a user experience issue because folks don't really know where to go, what to do, which brand is for them when they land on the website. How are we directing them to that? And in the times that we have tried, worked on structuring that, we do see traffic suffer. So I would be a little nervous about maintaining two websites is very hard, but it might be the best in the long run. It's something that I usually try not to recommend. Especially if you're like an individual consultant and the brand is like your web, like if the web brand is you, right? Then we can very easily build out like different programs and services that you offer. But if you're marketing the brands themselves as different brands, we might want to consider splitting that into two. I would want to see specifics, but I'm leaning toward it might be a bit more beneficial just from surface level. I am leaning toward it might be more beneficial for you to be managing two, depending on what the initial marketing looks like.
Thank you. The next question is very meta, which is, what are your thoughts on letting AI do an audit of your website?
Funny you ask this because I'm getting more and more requests for people who run this through Claude, and then they ask, and then they pay me to fix it. So, you know, I complicated because one of the disadvantages of an LLM is that they're not always operating on the most up-to-date data. We are seeing hallucinations in recommendations, and if you are not familiar with everything in SEO and you have an AI system running an audit, you don't know if something is inaccurate or being hallucinated. And there's a lot of issues with hallucination. Some are worse than others at hallucination. And just coming up with nonsense. Making up sources, making up concepts that don't exist. It happens. And if you're not familiar with the subject, you risk implementing that, right? And then you're going to be like, well, this doesn't exist. How do I know it doesn't exist? So, you know, I'm hesitant because of that, but but I think that answer is going to be the same based on anybody on their expertise, right? You're going to get only so far on the internet, but at some point you do have to sort of hand it over to somebody else. And I think that's going to be the case with any professional in the services. So, I have mixed feelings. I'm glad I'm glad we're starting in the right direction. But I am actively fixing those errors pretty regularly at this point.
AI keeping you in a job. That's not something we hear a lot about right now.
You know, I, the, the backlash is coming. I have a lot of thoughts on this, but the backlash is coming.
We might bring you back for a webinar on AI backlash.
Oh God. Oh God. Get ready.
So it looks like we have one more question. She asked, I rebranded my private practice that I closed about 2 years ago and am now relaunching. Is there a way to reuse that Google site where I had previously had 5 stars?
Google site, is this a Google business profile? If it's 5 stars, I'm assuming it's a Google business profile.
I'm assuming the same thing.
Okay.
Anicia, you can put it in the chat or the Q&A if you want to clarify. Business profile, yes.
Okay. So yes, you can make changes to your business name, but you have to be prepared to prove that that's the business, right? So pull documentation together before because so Google doesn't receive this as a spam because people change their names. They know this. But we want to make sure, Google might interpret that as like, oh God, you're trying to spam the profile or make major changes. So just be prepared with documentation before you do that. Have your DBA ready, have the documentation ready, like business, government registrations, all of that. Have it ready in case Google says, well, you're not, I mean, the GBP might just accept it right away. Like that's possible. They might not accept it for a week. They might reject it. Unfortunately, you're at their mercy. And so just have the proof ready because if they come back and say, well, we rejected your change, you can go back and say, well, no, I changed my business name. Here's the proof, right? Here's my documentation. So have that ready. But yeah, there's no reason businesses change their name all the time. There's no reason not to do it. Just have the documentation ready. Have your business registration. If you have a DBA, whatever that material looks like, just have all that documentation together. Another tip, there's a couple things you need without getting into too much detail. If you have a physical location and you see patients in a physical location, have proof that that's your real address. So if it's the lease or ownership of the building or a utility bill usually that is in your business name, that is also providing some proof. So you need just have that already when you do make the change so that way you can refute it without causing further delays.
Very well. Thank you so much. With that, it looks like we don't have any other outstanding questions. So I'm going to wrap up here. So we always have more webinars coming up the second or third Wednesday of the month, including our May 13th webinar on scaling effectively and efficiently, and on May 20th about reporting dashboards and KPIs for small businesses. You can find these webinars and other Jumpstart and partner events at jumpstartinc.org/events. At the end of today's session and in a follow-up email, you'll receive a brief survey. We appreciate your feedback, and so does Stella, as it allows us to continue to bring in experts and entrepreneurs to teach valuable lessons. Stella, thank you so much for packing such a punch and bringing so much valuable content to our entrepreneurs today. We really appreciate your time and energy and expertise, and we appreciate the crowd who came in with us today and hung in there for an hour and 45 minutes. It's exceptional of you all, but it was a great session. So thank you, everybody, and have a wonderful afternoon.